Thank you for joining me in this first segment where we start to prepare our data. First of all, we will be using SQL Server, and eventually we will work towards using this data in HDInsight and ultimately in Excel. So first of all, we have a database which is called NOAA, and it stores data in it about flash floods and other weather data. So first of all, we're going to tell SQL Server to use that particular database. Then what we will do is we will use a view, and this view will retrieve the necessary data for us. This will help us to visualize the data at a later point. So when we look under the Views folder, you can see the flash flood view, and when we set it to a query window, we can see the contents of that. We are going to change this select statement, however. We can see the contents of it there. So we have the state abbreviation, the county. Now this data is all American data. We can see we've got specific information about each flood along with the latitude and longitude as well. So what we have here is a simple select statement which retrieves all of that data. There's 432 rows, and it's all from the United States. So now we have seen the contents of our view, we can start to understand more and actually see more what the underlying data is telling us. Visualization is very important, obviously I believe that. It's a way of understanding the data, but it's also good to look at the raw detail as well. So what we will do now is we will start to look at HDInsight. At the time of production, this is still in preview at the moment, and we will go to that via a web browser. So here we can sign in, and we sign in using our Windows Live ID. So my particular Windows Live ID is Jen Stirrup, and then my email address. So if anybody has any questions, there it is. And then my password, which I'm obviously not going to give away. Thank you very much. And then we sign in. And when we sign in, this will take us through to the Windows Azure HDInsight dashboard. It's a very simple dashboard. We can see that it gives us some information about the preview. And what we will do initially is create a Hadoop cluster. Now you can download the software for HDInsight and use it on your local machine, or you can use Windows Azure. Now personally I prefer using Windows Azure because it saves me a lot of work in setting up clusters. Here it's very simple. We see the cluster status is simply up and running. When I click on Go to Cluster, it will give me a lot of information about how the cluster is behaving. So hopefully it will appear quite quickly. Here we are. You can see my cluster name is there, which is copperblue.cloudapp.net. And we have another number of options to look at. So we have the interactive console, remote desktop, the number of open ports. We also have history and some samples as well. So when we click on remote desktop, for example, that would give us an RDP session to the cluster. What's important to us for this particular web series is that you need to be able to use some of the client tools in order to access the data that's going to be stored in Microsoft's Apache Hadoop-based services. The most important piece here is the Hive add-in for Excel, and we can see how that's downloaded and installed. Basically, we need to do this because if we don't put the add-in as part of Excel, then we won't be able to access the data. Now, I believe firmly that Excel is the world's favourite business intelligence tool, and I also think it's one of the most popular pieces of software outside business intelligence as well. So here I have an Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to put all of our data into the Excel spreadsheet. Now, if this was a real life scenario, you would do your big data analysis on HDInsight, and you would return the aggregated results back to Excel or into Power Pivot and visualize the data that way. This isn't big data in terms of the size of the data that we're looking at, this is just a sample.